Call of Cthulhu. Where do I start with this one? I know exactly where to start. I will start with the narrative, which makes very little sense. Takes place in the city of Darkwater, which I have no idea how the hell the city of Darkwater is supposed to work in the first place, like just in all honesty. Because like they've got nothing going for them whatsoever, except for a fishing thing that died out until they caught what ended up being the Leviathan. And since then, there's nothing going on. The only thing anybody has is a tavern, or you know, the bar. But the bar, if the bar is the only place working any sort of economy, then that's not an economy, which means nobody lives there. Now, the only other part that we see is the bootleggers, which was a very big thing. It was very prominent in the 20s. Here's the thing, though. That city's been on nothing for decades, and Prohibition didn't start until 1920. So unless the city just rebuilt itself over the course of 4 years, which it clearly didn't, considering how derelict it is, I call bullshit. Yeah, so from the beginning, Darkwater, Blackwater, what it's called, makes no goddamn sense to me. Another thing that makes no sense to me is a lot of the plot. How did the cop come back to life? Now, I get that, you know, the explanation is probably that the cult brought him back to life. Okay, but then why is he still on Pierce's side? Why does he not remember jack shit? I mean, people like Dr. Colden got revived, yes, but they remember everything, and they're part of the cult. So why wasn't Officer Bradley still part of the cult? Now, one thing I am ambivalent about is the fact that Sarah Hawkins got called up into the painting and ends up becoming part of the cult, even after she didn't really want to be part of the cult. I'm ambivalent towards that because on one hand, it makes sense, but on the other hand, wasn't that the whole point of the amulet, unless I got the point of the amulet wrong? That could be wrong. You know, I won't count that against or for the game. I'll just mention that that's a thing. And then there's also the fact that Dr. Fuller, I don't even know what's going on with him. Like, I know his main thing, that he's experimenting on people and whatnot, probably for the cult. But, like, he's about to get killed by Pierce, who may or may not have a handgun of his own. I don't even know at this point. And he's about to be killed. But then I guess the ghost of Dr. Holden saves his life. And then he may or may not have been killed in a vision or in real life. I mean, first off, his death is kind of ambiguous because it's never made clear whether or not it's a vision. Maybe you're not supposed to know. And secondly, it's never made clear whether or not Dr. Colden actually saved him because she was still dead. But then, who was that? I kind of feel like the writers were doing shit and they didn't have it all fleshed out, so they just said, fuck it. What I'm trying to say is, the overall mechanics, except for the city, but as far as the cult goes, the overall mechanics I can get behind, but in general, but like there's certain bits and pieces that don't make any goddamn sense, and I don't know why. Overall, this is a very so to the gameplay now, it was a very the game was only about investigations. That's pretty much it. There were 2 parts that were actually any sort of horror whatsoever. The first one is in the insane asylum, which I don't really count as horror, considering the fact that it's just a bunch of jerk-off guards. Like, Outlast did that much better because they were actually psychopaths or the big brutish guy. But when it comes to Call of Cthulhu, they're just random guards, so who gives a fuck? And the other one would be in the caves with the cult. But even then, that honestly was barely horror, because they barely have any... Speaking of what, in that cave, the cult members barely have any kind of vision whatsoever. I mean, you can get pretty close to them, and it won't mean much difference. And yet, when it comes to the guys in the asylum, those guys, they have, like, real vision. Like if you in real life could see something out of the corner of your eye, they would have seen it in that asylum. So overall, the gameplay is weird. Like, there's one combat part of it towards the end, but all you do is just press the fucking R2 button. How fucking generic can you get? Like, fucking honestly. That part, I almost feel like that part either should not have been in the game, or they should have made a better mechanic for it. Because all you do is walk around and press the fucking R2 button until you run out of fucking ammo. I mean... But the investigation part of it was perfectly fine. The only thing I gotta say was moving forward, and I say this because I've seen 3 games now that do this shit, which is you go to this investigative mind palace where you can see what the fuck happened in the past, and then you judge your decisions based on that. I've seen 3 games out that's like that. Twin Mirror, which I uploaded, Sinking City, which I was recorded, but I'm no longer because fuck that game, and now this one. So I really hope that games, investigative games, can stop doing that, or at least put their own twist on it, because as interesting as it is, it's getting a bit cliche as a game mechanic at this point. Like, that's not a major problem. It's not like a bad nitpick. It's more like a minor nitpick. I'm just saying, like, I would rather not see it again if I don't have to. One unique point of it was the leveling system. The fact that you'll get like 15 character points, and yet upgrading a single thing takes like 6 of them. So even if you have 20, you can only really upgrade like 2 attributes, which is mostly fine, I suppose. And then the occultism and the medicine. Okay, the occultism actually really matters, and so does your sanity. But then the medicine, except for like 2 little investigative options, that one didn't even really matter in the end. I don't know. Some of them were kind of worthless. Same with strength. Strength was kind of worthless as far as I'm concerned. Speaking of dialogue options, now let's get to the bread and butter. And I bitched about this during the game too. Dialogue options are locked for no fucking reason. Okay? The biggest one is Sarah Hawkins. Motherfucker Pierce sees that he witnesses the motherfucking cult. Sees that Sarah Hawkins is part of the cult, talks to Sanders about it. So he knows what the fuck's going on. At least he has an idea. And then for the motherfucking dialogue options, the option to say that there's a motherfucking cult on the island is locked because your occultism isn't high enough? You don't have to be a member of a motherfucking cult to know there's a motherfucking cult on the motherfucking island if you've seen the motherfucking cult on the motherfucking island. Why am I so passionate about this one point? Because how fucking stupid it is. Honestly. Like I said before, that would be like having a dialogue option locked to say, you know, oh, what color is grass, right? The correct option is grass is green. I know sometimes it can be brown or whatever, but typically grass is fucking green. So like, it would be like if the dialogue option is grass is green, but then a dialogue option is locked out because you're not a fucking scientist or some shit. Like, if I go out in my fucking front yard, or even if I live in an apartment, if I go out fucking side and see some fucking grass, I can see it's fucking green. I don't have to have a goddamn fucking PhD in science or whatever the fuck to be able to tell that. I don't know. That shit fucking bothers me. Like, if you've experienced shit for yourself, you should be able to talk about that shit. Like, you don't have to have been in an automobile accident to know that those are fucking devastating to the human body. I don't know. That part of it is fucking stupid, and that is a major fucking problem I have in this game. Why? Because, okay, the 2 most important parts of this fucking game, there are 2 of them. One is investigations, the other is fucking dialogue. So if your fucking dialogue is fucking fucked up, then fuck your fucking dialogue, in all fucking honesty. Like, I can't stress that enough, how fucking stupid that is. Just straight up. It's so fucking stupid having some fucking points locked. Because, like, who knows? Okay, in all honesty, this game seems kind of low budget. And I'll get to more of that in a minute. But it's like, I doubt it would have even really changed anything. But just the fact that it's locked is fucking stupid. But especially if it does change shit, then it's equally fucking stupid. But so what do I... Now being said, the dialogue is bullshit to me, but the investigativeness isn't like the most advanced I've ever seen, but it does its job well enough. It suffices, so I'm fine with that. The dialogue though is fucking stupid. So on to the reason why this seems like a kind of like a low budget sort of game to me. This kind of mixes with atmosphere, so I'll go ahead and talk about that at the same time. First off, every single character model, they look good enough. Well, they don't look the best, but they suffice. But they look stiff. Especially like when they talk, when they walk around or whatever, they look extremely stiff. Every time, all the time. Another thing is sound. Now, the music suffices for the most part. It's nothing special, it's nothing incredible. Like, the atmosphere, I'll say it's right. The entirety of the atmosphere is nothing special at all. It suffices and that's all it does. It doesn't go above and beyond in any metric. But here's what it does do, and this is a problem, is the sound. For some fucked up reason, between the cutscenes, which are pre-rendered in this game, which is different. Most games these days are not pre-rendered cutscenes. They use the game's enhanced graphics, like the in-game graphics of cutscenes. This game uses pre-rendered cutscenes. And I can tell it because, one, the graphics are very different, and two, because the sound is very different. For some fucked up reason, this game's sound is really low in cutscenes and at a normal level in regular gameplay. So what'll happen is, and especially towards the beginning, because it goes like gameplay, cutscene for no reason. And so you'll just hear it go, you know, from this to this to this to this again and again, and it's like, what the fuck? So for that reason, it feels really low budget, and maybe that's the reason why the writing isn't all there, because it's low budget. I mean, shit. So the last thing I'll talk about here is the level design. As far as the level design goes, you got a city, or a little town, village, I suppose, which is about as shitty as you can get. The mansion actually looks nice. It looks derelict, but for what it is, it looks pretty nice, actually. I gotta admit that. The Hawkins mansion looks pretty nice. And then, last but not least, you got the caves. That's pretty much all this game has. It has the caves, the mansion, and the city. So the caves look like fucking caves. Oh, that's not true. There's also the asylum. The asylum, quite honestly, is probably the best part of the whole thing. I'd say the asylum and the mansion are the best parts of the whole thing. Except the asylum still looks like it runs, even though sometimes there's blood streaks and whatnot on the ground, but that's because of Fuller being an asshole. But yeah, the mansion and the... I'll give it... At least it has difference of localities. Because Darkwater, Blackwater, whatever the fuck it's called, looks shitty. The caves look like fucking caves, unremarkable for the most part. And then you got the mansion, which looks nice, but derelict, because it is. And then you got the asylum, which looks like a motherfucking asylum. But still, different aesthetics. So there's that. It doesn't all look either elegant or shitty. So I'll give this game that. And in all honesty, well, you know, I got one more thing to talk about, which is the characters themselves. Edward Pierce. He's a World War I vet with issues and sanity, which makes sense. And that's what you get from him. Which, to be honest, is the only thing you really need from him in a game like this, because the game revolves around the cult. You got Sarah Hawkins, who does her best, who paints. She accidentally puts this thing into the world that creates the Shambler, which I find it interesting. Here's one thing, speaking of the Shambler, one thing I find interesting is the fact that Edward Pierce himself never once does not permanently abolish the Shambler, and yet he never cares about it again. And to my knowledge, he's never made aware of the fact that Sarah Hawkins and whatever his name was got rid of it. So is that a problem? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's up with that? I don't know. It's just a thought. Anyway, so Sarah Hawkins, I get her for the most part. She's a terrible husband. The cult, she makes paintings. One of them got fucked shit up. Although, you know, actually that brings up another point that I have too. It seems to me, so there's the cult and then there's the Shambler, but they don't seem to have anything to do with each other per se. Because Sarah Hawkins makes this painting, which creates the Shambler, lets the Shambler come in, kind of like the Mist sort of deal. And then they have the Leviathan, which is eating it, is what created the cult, to my knowledge. So what do they have to do with each other? The only explanation I can think of, and maybe this is it, is that Sarah Hawkins, under the guise of the occult, painted that painting under their direction, per se, and created the Shambler that way. So maybe the Shambler got into our existence because of the cult. That's one thing I could think of. Anybody else, Officer Bradley, there to stop shit. Although he never seems to be at work again, so I guess he took a leave, I guess. You got Fitzroy, who is apparently part of the cult. Actually, the cult makes sense. Like, everyone of the whole... Like, my assumption is that everyone in the goddamn city is part of the cult. That's my guess. But then why would they be upset about... Why would they wonder what happened to Charles Hawkins if everybody's part of the cult? Unless they somehow keep that from the police department. At this point, I think I'm asking questions that the game doesn't care to answer. So I'm going to stop asking those questions. And I'll just get right to the end of it. Which is this. My final grading. Because quite frankly, this game has some weird shit in it that I don't think it cares to explain itself. So here's my final grading. In all honesty, it suffices in some areas, not in others. It doesn't go above and beyond in anything. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give this game a D+. D as in Delta, D+. I don't really like this game in all honesty, but I'll put it at the upper echelon of the me not liking it. So there's that. So it may not have been cohesive, it may not have covered everything, but that's my thoughts on Call of Cthulhu, the game. So with that being said, thank you for your time, have a good day, and goodbye.